everyone, welcome back to another video. As you can tell, I already actually kind of did a reverse. I put the bulk of my makeup on already because I'm trying to film some b-roll for my next speed review. I'm trying to increase my video quality, but that is neither here nor there. Today I am here to film with the Oden's Eye Flora Story palette. Thank you so very much. This was very kindly gifted to me. Yeah, this is the one that I wanted to start with first. This was the one that if I could have only picked one of the three, this beautiful color scheme was what I would have wanted to go for first. Now, I know Oden's Eye has been under some amount of controversy lately, but needless to say, just for some context, I personally don't really have any relations with Oden's Eye. I have bought from them quite a bit at this point, and I do own a lot of their products, and there are still products on my wish list, but I personally don't have any brand relations with Oden's Eye. I actually did get told by them a while back that they were going to send me PR and that they asked for my address, and after I sent them my address, I literally got ghosted. Probably a year since this happened, and I never got anything back. And I know shortly after that, I posted videos using their palettes where I wasn't like completely over the moon about their products. Like, I had my critiques and I wonder if they saw those and they were like, okay, no, we're not sending this person PR, in which case, I don't know. So that's the extent of my interaction with the brand. We'll go ahead and get started. So I want to do something, of course, I'm just going to go ahead and start with the greens. So I'm going to start off with Clover, which is the earth toned kind of sage green. Reminds me a lot of the green in, what is it, Retro Glam? This shadow is applying very well. It actually reminds me of the shadow in the Flower Nose Chocolate Shop palette, the Young Shepherdess. It actually looks very, very similar to that. Very nice, blends out very easily, as you can see. Now, I do have eyelid wrinkles, and I know I'm not a fan of this. This is the part of aging that I really did not sign up for, you guys. So I'm gonna go into Shroom now. Here's Shroom. I'm gonna use this quite lightly to blend out the green without turning the whole look into mud. I'm trying to use it in a way such that it's pretty close to the skin tone of my eyelids, which my eyelids do have some natural hyperpigmentation. So I'm trying to just kind of lean into that so that it's not muddy. So this palette, aside from the purples, really doesn't actually have much depth or contrast of value. So this shade Shroom and then the shade Clover actually are very similar in value. So if I were to use this Shroom at max opacity and max pigmentation, like how I laid down Clover, I will make the look turn very muddy and flat. I have had some people leave comments about how they do really appreciate, even if it makes the video longer, they do really appreciate me being pretty thorough about talking through what's going on in my head as I plan my eyeshadow looks. It's just all art school, honestly. Do you see how it's like I barely laid down any, and you can tell I definitely put down darker eyeshadow, but it's not overpowering Clover? And now I could have used Sage to make it darker, but Sage is very, very desaturated compared to Clover, and I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to look so earthy. I don't want this look to be like earth grunge. I want it to be more of like a fairy forest soft kind of look. Okay, so I predict this look is going to overall be pretty simple, not gonna lie. There's just something so elegant and soft about having these two shades together and nothing else, so I really feel like I shouldn't be piling on top of this. Like, I'll just be honest. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the shimmers. And if I think I need more, I'll put on more, but I think Misty will definitely... So turned around. Misty will be the perfect shade to put over the middle of my eyelid. It does seem to pick up all right on a brush. It feels quite hard in the pan, and as you can see here, I'm laying it down. It kind of has a bit of a more sparkly feel to it, not so much of a pigmented base. Quite hard pressed in the pan, which actually, I'm gonna have to be honest, I do kind of prefer my sparklier shades and my shiny shades to be a little bit less squishy. As you might have seen in older videos if you've watched, especially my Unearthly Cosmetics one where I used Fall Magic, I really had such a terrible experience with those shadows. I've come to notice that if the shadow is so soft like that, it just wears away and creases and looks terrible in no time at all. So when it feels a little bit drier like this shadow does, I actually kind of take that as a good sign for wear. It just doesn't necessarily look as impressive, I guess you could say. But if you want to amp up this shadow, I could totally see you just using like glitter glue, which I'm not using in this look, but totally could be something you'd opt for. Honestly, this palette is not, I feel like, super gearing itself towards super intense looks like what you generally see on my channel. And then I'm going to take Dawn, which is right here. I'm gonna use this as my inner corner highlight. This shade reminds me a lot of Phoenix from Terra Moons, and therefore I do feel it is going to be very similar to the shade in Hella. As far as Oden's Eyes multi-chromes or borderline multi-chromes that they stick in their palettes, I think they are okay. And for the price you're paying for the palette, they're kind of about what you would expect. But if you want a really nice multi-chrome and you don't mind buying a single and paying a little bit more for a really good one, really just go with Cleona or Terra Moons, I think is just the way to go. Like, it sounds so boring these days. Anytime anyone asks like, multi-chromes, what are the best singles, and everybody responds Terra Moons and Cleona, it feels like it's such a boring reply, but I have to be honest, they are the best multi-chrome makers that I have personally ever stumbled upon, unless you want to shell out $125 for Danessa Myrix's Lightwork 4. But yeah, you can see how it's like, it is shifty, it is pretty, but it feels a little bit weak. Alright, and then I'm gonna take Best Buds, and I want this to go on the lower lash line. I'm nervous about this shade. I hope it's not super crumbly and dry. Alright, so I'm getting a little bit of fallout. Yeah, it scared me at first. I thought it would be like the really crumbly, dry, almost frosty feeling shade, but it actually is pretty nice. Now, it's not anywhere near as shiny as the shade above it. You can see it's not as sparkly. It's also not foiled either. It feels, honestly, kind of like a ColourPop shimmer. Like, maybe they just are scaling up too quickly. I don't know. But this is my least favorite shimmer formula from them, and in fact, there are a couple of shades in Pat McGrath's Holiday palette are like this, and it made me absolutely abhor that entire palette. Like, I was so mad that I even just paid for that. But yeah, you can see it's not a bad shade, but they're $33.90 each for 10 shades. That's not cheap. I would expect better. I'm just gonna put on a little bit more of the matte green. Particularly, I'm gonna start working on the outer corner. You know, I don't want to seem like I'm being negative or anything like that. I definitely feel like I've seen better, and so it was kind of disappointing to me when I was using the shimmers and I was like, oh, what is this? As I said, this look and all of the looks using this palette will probably be pretty soft because there is not very much depth in this palette aside from the purple. You know, I was so excited. This was the one palette I would have wanted the most. Why do I feel so let down? Do not take any of this as me trying to shade makeup just for fun by any stretch of the imagination. I'm so happy for her. She did a great job. Congratulations. I am not saying she is terrible at making a palette. Like, please do not construe anything I'm saying as a dig against her. Everything I'm saying is either related to Oden's Eyes formula or my personal preference and expectations. So let me just clear the air there. I don't want anyone thinking that I don't like makeup just for fun. I actually love her channel. I watch almost all of her videos and I think her swatches are like so informative. So I do really like watching her channel. So please don't take this the wrong way. But I feel like I was gonna like this palette a lot more than I do now that I'm using it. So here they are swatched on my finger. Especially this shade here, it does shift quite a bit, so. And then the shade I used in the middle of my eyelid is this shade here. It has a little bit of base pigment, but not too much. And then this shade is what I used on my lower lash line. That's what these look like. And this one here is just kind of borderline feeling like crumbly-ish. Not my favorite. I will kind of see if I can just pack this on a little bit more with my finger just while I have it. I'm kind of covering up the matte a little bit more than I was expecting to. I wanted the matte to still show through, so I'm kind of covering it up. Oops. It is very pretty that this, you know, the middle finger one has quite a nice sparkle to it. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not feeling this look. I will go ahead and finish off this look off camera. I think I'm just going to do mascara today. I may put on some eyeliner and I'll finish off the entire rest of my makeup, and then I'll be back to round off this first look, and then I will do the second look tomorrow. Okay, so I think this is going to be the finished look. So as I mentioned in the video while I was working on the look, I was just not feeling this palette. I'm not really feeling this look. I feel like it just kind of looks messy and just not super well coordinated. So it by no means is bad, but I don't really feel like me, and I just don't really feel put together. I did, as you can see, add a tiny bit of eyeliner, and I also did tightline my upper waterline kind of in the outer half, and then I put in some inner corner eyeliner just to sharpen up my eyes. I felt like my eyes almost looked blurry and undefined. It's just such a weird feeling. And not in a good way. That's basically it. That's the look. I hope the next one turns out better. I think once I start working with the purples, it may improve a little bit, but because of how dull I felt my eyes looked, I decided to put on a darker lip. This is the darkest lip I have done in a very long time, so I'm not feeling the most confident in my application of it. I feel like it got a little messy, but oh well. So this is definitely not a color I really wear that often. I do want to start wearing darker lips more often, but generally speaking, with my eyes being always super busy, I don't usually go for it, but I thought it would maybe help just pull the look together, or at the very least kind of pull attention away from everything else. Yeah, this is not really the look I imagined for myself, unfortunately. For blush, I did use the Charlotte Tilbury Pink Pop, and it ended up being too warm for the eyeshadow I created for it, so I did use Blooming Soul from Stila on the edges, and I used this to kind of cool it down and blend it out a little bit better. On the cheeks, initially I used the MAC limited edition highlighter, this here, but I ended up deciding that I didn't like that and I wanted it to be a little bit more green, so I ended up going over top of that, and also on my nose and on my brow arch I used the Lethal and Teresa highlighter right here, one of the better green highlighters in my collection. I'm still searching for the perfect cool toned green highlighter. And then for the lips, I have the Pat McGrath shade in She's So Deep, which is this shade right here. And then on top of it, I wanted to kind of gloss up my lips a little bit, and so I used the Dior Lip Glow oil in 020 Mahogany. Here we go, yep. This one right here. I'm just not feeling it, so I'm just going to go ahead and sign off for this video, and you'll see the next look in a couple of seconds. Hi everyone, I'm back for look number 2. Now, I didn't end up having too much trouble with the wear time of look number 1, which was great. Today I'm using the Rare Beauty eye primer just to see how these shadows fare on my eyelids this time. I haven't used that one in a while because it's been kind of humid, and we'll try and redeem ourselves with the purples today. So I'm going to go in with Azalea, the name of a cat at the shelter. She's really cute. I'm going to go in with this one, and I think I kind of have a vague idea of what I want to do. We'll see if it works, but I think I wanted to try putting Azalea here, like kind of on the inner part of the eyelid, and then I wanted to try putting Orchid on the outer part to be the deep shade, and then kind of have like Sage kind of floating on top of everything. I'm not super sure how it's gonna go. I am using a softer brush, I'm well aware of that, but I am feeling like kind of not, there's some stray glitter that is not from Azalea. That is not Azalea, does not have sparkles. I must just have some sparkles left over on this brush, so ignore that. It does feel kind of like the shade feels a little bit thin in the build-up, but it is blending out nicely. Now, the mattes wore fine on my eyes the first time I wore them. With the NARS Smudge Proof Eye Base, they wore fine. Yeah, do you see how thin of a layer I get? I'm going to try and use this brush. Yeah, this shade feels quite firmly pressed. I'm not getting very much on my brush each time I go in. So that would explain why the shade felt like it was thin on my eyelid, is because it is actually pretty firmly pressed in the pan. It is a really pretty shade of purple that I definitely do not see often, so I'm going to go into Orchid now. Orchid definitely packs onto the brush much better. It could just be that the shade of purple that Azalea is really not easy to make, which I know purples can be difficult. This shade definitely is going on much better. You can see the general shape that I'm creating here. Orchid definitely went on a lot better though. You can see didn't have as much trouble there. I'm just pulling it out just ever so slightly more. I felt it was a little bit too kind of close. Yeah, you see I just pulled out a little bit further and I'm still maintaining that wing tapered shape that I wanted. Okay, so now I'm going to take another kind of fluffy brush, but I want one that's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to now start using sage. So initially I had thought about using sage kind of right up here, but as you can see the purple has kind of taken over and I don't want to create mud. I probably am going to create mud, but this does pick up a lot better, so we'll see what I can create by just kind of putting the shadow up here. We'll see what kind of chaos I create for myself. This shade definitely went on much better than Azalea did. Azalea so far has been kind of the weakest shade. I feel like I probably increased the mud factor of the look a little bit, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it down because I just am not super satisfied with the performance of Azalea. And this shade, the pigmentation and the opacity definitely is much more impressive, so I am kind of almost able to just kind of cover up Azalea almost entirely. So now I just made the look a little bit darker than I intended, but as you can see it looks really messy though because I went and applied it above the wing, so now the look looks really messy on the outer part. I will probably take some powder foundation to fix it. Okay, so this look is at this point looking super messy, so I'm going to go into some kind of like powder foundation and I am going to try and see if I can kind of cover up some of these errors. Powder foundation to essentially conceal and get rid of the eyeshadow where I don't want it anymore. Powder foundation can definitely be a really great eraser tool for when you feel like you've gone too far. So you can see I was able to erase a lot of eyeshadow. Now if you have dry eyelids like me, then obviously, you know, you can only do this to a certain extent before your eyelid will just kind of start rejecting further pigment. Doing this is going to mattify your eyelid to the point where if you're going to put shimmers back down, you might have trouble getting the shimmers to stick, so just do bear that in mind. This is not really dry eye friendly like at all. I am kind of frustrated that Orchid wasn't able to give me the depth I want. Sage ended up being so dark that it kind of is overwhelming Orchid, which is a little bit frustrating, so I'm gonna see if I can pile on more Orchid and get it to look a little bit deeper. So I'm just going to switch to a tiny packing brush. Okay, that's a little bit better. I'm going to go into Azalea, which I know we had a great experience with it the first time, but I'm going to use this to smoke out the lower lash line. Okay, and now I am going to use Azalea to blend out the edge of the look. It's a shame, this is such a unique shade of purple. I had really higher hopes for this shade. If I want to put shimmers on top, I'm going to need a glitter glue. So I'm going to take my NYX and I'm going to use a little bit, just a little bit. I'm using an extremely thin layer as well because I really don't want there to be a super sticky layer on my eyelids, so I kind of smudge it out on the back of my hand and then that way it's evenly dispersed in a wide area of my finger. Okay, so first off I'm going to start off with Magnolia, which is the shade that I wanted to use as the point color. Ooh, it picks up really well on a brush. I'm going to kind of arc it up in a diagonal to help with the transition between Sage and Orchid. You see how I applied it in like a diagonal? This is definitely very sparkly, very pretty. So this is what a more dispersed layer would look like if I were to apply it more thinly. And then I will take, I haven't used Lush yet, so I'm going to take Lush and try and see how that works closer to like my inner corner. And I'm gonna try and put this on the inner corner and we'll see how badly this looks, right? Okay, that shade is giving me some fallout, so do be warned. This shade is definitely quite firmly pressed in the pan. It does feel a little bit dry, almost kind of like a crumbly-ish shade. On the finger it looks very unimpressive. As I disperse it on my eye, it looks a little bit better, but this shade is definitely the Oden's eye formula I do not like. It had a lot of potential, but yeah, my lights definitely are really playing up with the glitter, Like I said, I think my lights are really harsh feeling right now. I'm not the biggest fan of my lighting setup. So they look really sparkly, which is really nice, but I feel like I might be borderline deceiving you guys with how good the shadows look because the lighting is so harsh and directional. It's kind of really playing up the shadows, almost like it's making it look better, and it's also causing my face to look both in and out of focus at the same time. I'm not a fan of the film production in this video, I'm sorry. This is kind of gonna be the look so far. I am barely okay with it, I'll be honest. So ordinarily, if I was doing this and I was using multiple palettes, I would use like maybe something from Phytosurgeons, or I would go into like Sparks. Purpose of this video, I will just strictly use this palette, and you see how that kind of hides some of the roughness. And then I am gonna kind of use this almost like a shade transformer. So when in doubt, if the look's not looking, just add something sparkly. I definitely much prefer the multi-chromes in Oden's Eyes palettes as shade transformers as opposed to using them standalone. I am getting some fallout. This is going to be the finished look. I tried my best with this palette, but ultimately I do feel like I just couldn't really get the best look. Now I do understand that maybe I just was not putting shades together well. Maybe I'm just having an off week, off month where I'm just not thinking, I'm not at my top game, so maybe I did a poor job putting these colors together, but I genuinely do really feel like I had some pretty significant issues getting things to work together. So I'm gonna finish off my eyes and my face, and then I'll be back and I will discuss kind of my criticisms and my thoughts about this palette. We'll go shade by shade. Okay, so this is going to be my finished look. Honestly, I think I was able to pull it together. This definitely, I think, turned out way better than my first look did, but not like my favorite I've ever done, but you know, we rescued it. So the only real thing worthy to note really is that the lip is the Nougat Sand from the Romand Glasting Melting Balms. I keep wanting to call them Glasting Water Balms, but it's Glasting Melting Balm. So it's this one right here. I just overlined my lips, and then I just wanted to do something just kind of nudish because my eye look is pretty strong, and I'm still not quite so sure yet how to match purple with my lips. Ultimately, the look, I feel like you can kind of tell that I struggled and I had to use a lot of sparkly stuff to kind of conceal my struggles, but at the end of it all, I think it all worked out. I do have lashes on for this look because it is, you know, more colorful. So I hope you guys maybe enjoyed watching this 2 looks 1 palette video. I feel like my first look was so rough, I almost feel like it's not even worthy to post, but overall I have to say I really thought I would like this palette a lot better. And I'm so shocked that I don't. Like, I'm truly shocked that I couldn't make this palette work like I had hoped I could. So in terms of versatility, I definitely felt very limited with this palette. Now I know it does have 10 shades, but somehow it felt more limiting to me than it should be, even though it only had 2 shades left than 2 shades less than a 12 pan palette. Best buds were that really crumbly, dry feeling of shimmer that I expect out of ColourPop and not Oden's Eye, and certainly not out of Pat McGrath's most recent holiday palette, which I have ragged on and on about how much I hated those shades. Those 2 shades definitely remind me of that, and they were not really that great. Now, of course, for this second look, I did use glitter glue because my eyelids ended up pretty matte after all the correcting I had to do, and glitter glue definitely can make just about any shimmer shade look way better than it actually is. But for those of you who are not inclined to use glitter glue, which I completely understand, then I feel like those 2 shades were just not the formula I like from Oden's Eye. So as you can see, I do have more criticisms than otherwise with this palette so far. I really truly thought I would absolutely love this palette and everything about it, but I just can't bring myself to love it as much as I thought I would, which kills me. I will say that in terms of the mattes, Shroom, Sage, Clover, and Orchid were really, really good. Really easy to use, and I can definitely tell you that Shroom and Clover wore very well. I didn't get creasing or fading or patchiness over the course of about 5 or 6 hours. Now, bear in mind, that's not a full day. Like, I'm not out here working 14-hour shifts testing things for you guys, and I also have dry eyelids, so if an eyeshadow is even mediocre, it usually wears pretty well on me, so take these with a massive grain of salt, but I did not have any wear issues with those mattes. But Azalea for being so unique, I was really excited about Azalea personally because it is such a unique shade of purple that I really have a hard time pinning down in any other palettes in my collection. But it ended up being very sheer, very difficult to build, and very thin feeling. It was a little bit hard pressed, but it also had like kick up. So I do understand purples are not easy to formulate, and that shade definitely feels like a really big challenge to try and make if you wanted to. So it just definitely struck me as the kind of purple that would be pretty difficult to make, but it still really bummed me that the shade just ended up not working out like I had wanted it to. So I tried to use it initially, as you could see, and now you essentially can't see it anymore because I covered it up with sage because it was just not doing me any favors whatsoever, and I was definitely really bummed about that, but you know, that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Orchid, on the other hand, as you can see, I was able to build. It did require a little bit of building and I had to use a dense packing brush, but we got there. Very beautiful, and it blended out really, really easily. Definitely these mattes, no matter how sheer or opaque they were, the blend was always super effortless. I feel like somehow, ironically, Oden's Eyes mattes are now better than their shimmers, whereas it used to be in the initial releases I've tried from them, some of which I no longer have, it was definitely the other way around. You would definitely be buying those palettes mostly for the shimmers, and the mattes you just kind of tolerated. Now I feel like the mattes are so much more pleasurable and enjoyable, but the shimmers are so hit and miss. Now these shades are not squishy or oily or anything, so it's not like you're gonna get weird creasing or patching or like taking off the shadow underneath problems that some indie formulas have done to me in the past. Now, Makeup Just for Fun has stated before that she really likes to use Dawn as a transformative shade. I definitely agree with her statement on that because on the first look when I tried to use that as an inner corner highlight, I was honestly super disappointed. But here you can see I'm using it mostly as almost like a glossy eye topper, and then I also used it on the inner corner on top of Lush, and then I also used it thinly across on top of Orchid on the lower lash line. And you can see that used in this respect, it does enhance the look significantly. Its personal individual presence is really quite low and understated. So definitely, if you're not really into transformative toppers, if you're going to use this palette as a standalone and you want a bright inner corner highlight, just use your face highlight. So with that all being said, I'm going to end the video here. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about anything, and I'm going to end the video here. Goodbye!